Let me ask you. So we have these midterms coming up, and of course, so many scary things are happening right now with Roe v. Wade and indications of ending contraception and same-sex marriage and
Yeah.
interracial. Although I think interracial marriage is safe because Clarence Thomas ain't letting
Thomas
go of
is
that.
then
I'm just
one.
gotta
Right. Come on. You're
that
right.
ain't going nowhere.
That's
I'm
right.
just saying.
Yeah.
But I've been in an interesting space in these on these airwaves that I'm getting so many people who are calling in saying, I didn't get what I want in these past 2 years. I didn't get what I wanted in 8 years. I'm not voting. I'm tired. I'm never going to vote Republican, but I'm just tired. And I'm seeing so many people who are disenchanted. And I get so frustrated because it's the long game,
Yeah.
for me. I
Yeah.
think about Black folks during Reconstruction that didn't get what they wanted, you know, and they kept voting and they were able to elect a historic amount of Black people to the South, sadly, not Black women because of the times. But I'm
Yeah.
just curious to know, where are you? You know, you're a professor, you're in the thick of this. What do you say to people who are so disenchanted and who think they can remove themselves from the political process?
Thank you for that question. It is a thing I think about a lot. And like you, I share this frustration because part of the thing that I want to say is revolutions don't happen in the voting booth, but that doesn't mean that we don't vote. I do both things. I am an activist, when times permit and we're not in pandemic times, I am in the streets. I am part of activist communities. I see my classroom as a place to help students to come to the kinds of radical ideas that can help them to change the world and make it better and more just and more equal. And at the same time, I step in a voting booth, and I step in a voting booth because my great grandmother came of age just after the passage of the 19th Amendment, and then lived in the deep South. And I got to know my great grandmother when I was a little girl, and she voted in every election because she knew what it meant not to be able to vote. But I also know that that argument is not especially compelling to people, right? They say, well, just because our ancestors voted and because they died to vote, what have we gotten as a result of that? Well, let me think about it in the contemporary moment. We have lost one in every 300 or so Black people to this pandemic. Not every 300
Mm,
Black people that had COVID, but every 300 Black people that exist, we have lost like one person.
mm.
And we would have lost more if we had been given over to a Republican administration that was steeped in denialism. We wouldn't have had broad vaccine access. We would not have survived the first year, the second year of the pandemic with stimulus and all of that, right? Those things come when you have people who are at least moderately on the left and who are not truth deniers. One of the challenges we face is that we think that government is the space of revolution. That is not what government does. Government keeps the lights on, right? Government makes it so that you have a functional enough democracy so that you can then go in the streets and fight for the things and push for the things that you want without being suppressed by a fascistic madman, right? So we have to reimagine our expectations. So, yes, long game. Also, though, it is about recognizing sometimes it does feel disrespectful to me when folks say, I'm hopeless, I'm a cynic, I don't believe in anything. I say, we are here because of other people's willingness to hope in freedom projects that they did not get to see in their lifetime. And so, how dare we tell the ancestors who lived in slavery from the day they were born to the day they died that their hope didn't matter when we're here and we're free and we're able to vote and we're able to call out white people for their racism and we're able to read, you're able to have a radio show. I'm able to be a professor. We just because we haven't gotten nearly everything that we want or deserve doesn't mean that we have gotten nothing, doesn't mean that we are where we were 150 years ago. And that is why the right is fighting so hard to take us back to those conditions. And I don't want to have to reckon with my ancestors someday and say that because I came of age in a world where struggle still existed, that I was mad. And so I just gave it all over. And I didn't think that there was anything worth fighting for. So to me, the vote becomes a way to participate in keeping the lights on and preserving the kind of infrastructure that allows us to then fight for and bring about the world that we want to see. So, like as one final example, Joe Manchin is the bane of my existence, right?
He's a Dixiecrat. He is a
He is
Dixiecrat.
he is terrible. But do we understand that if we could just get one more Democrat in Congress on our side, his power goes away
Done.
immediately.
He's a
One, like
non-factor.
not
Right.
five, not 10, one. His power is as precarious. It looks like he's running the world if you choose to see it from his point of view. But if you
Mm.
recognize that all you need is to gain one seat to dilute all of his ability to blow up entire Democratic agendas, then all of a sudden, then you see the urgency of going to vote, right? And so we have to not concede the narrative, right? This is why books are so important. I read a statistic some months ago that said something like 54% of all Americans read below an eighth grade level.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah. And it means that this is what the GOP is trying to do. They are trying to make us illiterate so that they can control us. So when I write children's books that are colorful and that have these colorful characters and that are inviting kids to read, trust me that I'm not just doing that because I like pretty colors and fun books. I am trying to bring about a revolution by asking children to think about how they can participate in making the world better and doing that from the very first moments that they are connecting words to ideas. And we as adults cannot then abdicate our responsibility to do the same thing. Words mean things. So if we cannot say, well, nothing ever changes, when we saw that those stimulus checks brought 50% of children out of poverty, made it possible for folks to have savings. The failure was that we didn't have the infrastructure to continue. But we actually did get a glimpse of what it means when Democrats win offices and govern to the left. And our job is not to be discouraged at the battles that we lose, but rather to recognize that the wins are a map to the places that we can go. And so we got to keep our minds straight. And if we're going to ask our children to become literate and to invest in ideas and to read and to try to have a critical understanding of the world, then we as adults have to stay engaged and have to continue to believe that something is possible. Because if we don't, then we're also letting down these young people. And then that means that I have written this book for nothing. That
Mm.
means that I have invited children into a failed project that adults are abdicating their responsibility for. And I refuse that. I
Mm.
refuse the cynicism of that. I refuse the fatalism of that. I refuse the hopelessness of that because there are young people here who are counting on us to imagine that there is something worth saving and fighting for.
Can I just add to something worth saving and fighting for? I think what I try and tell people too is that there are a plethora of candidates that I didn't have when I was younger, when I was 18. I mean, we got Malcolm Kenyatta, who ran
Yes.
for Senate in Pennsylvania. We got Chevron Jones in Florida. We got Gary Chambers, who's running in Louisiana
Yeah.
currently. Val
Yeah.
Demings running in Florida. I hear people say, I want someone that has this agenda, they're out there. But we got to vote
Support
for them.
them.
You can't
Yes.
say they aren't out. This ain't 1980s Democrats. It's not
Listen.
1990s Democrats.
Listen, Malcolm Kenyatta, I go to church with
Oh,
Malcolm Kenyatta and his partner, right? They are about this
right.
life and he is amazing. And the way that he was holding the Pennsylvania government to the fire, right? Congress to the fire over their election shenanigans in 2020. I mean, this is the kind of, morally sort of centered, politically progressive leadership that we need. I'm from Louisiana. I have seen those amazing Gary Chambers ads and I'm like, come on
Yes.
and bring it, right? And I'm from Louisiana, a state that 2 years ago wrote into the Constitution that there was no right to abortion, and then
Mm.
swiftly enacted a trigger ban the minute that Dobbs was passed. But I am from a state where I have known many women who have needed abortion care over the course of their life. And one of the few remaining abortion clinics is in my hometown in Louisiana, and it is now closed. And so, throughout the deep South, Gulf South region, people cannot go to Texas, they cannot go to Louisiana, they cannot go to Mississippi. Where will people get care? And here is the thing, when we watch Ohio senators, Ohio Congress fighting about a 10-year-old girl needing an abortion in this calendar year, a 10-year-old girl that I love, that is in my life, had to disclose to her mother that she was being sexually abused by her mother's partner. That happened
Mm.
in calendar year 2022. And so thankfully, there has been intervention. That person has been removed and arrested. She is on her path to healing, and she was able to escape becoming a victim, in the sense of like also having to deal with pregnancy. She thankfully escaped that fate. But these are real people who are real children in our world who are being made prey. And we can worry about the sensationalism of the kind of sexual predators that everybody's angry about, or conversely in denial about. But there's another kind of predation that is happening, and it is the government predation of stealing education, life chances, and possibilities from young people, right? By stealing them from women, by stealing them from folks who can have babies, from stealing them from mothers, for instituting misery as a social condition. When you take away rights, you are legislating misery. And that is what we have. And this is why the progressive left, we've got to be out here saying one side wants to legislate misery for you, the other side wants to legislate possibility, right? Wants to legislate opportunity, wants to legislate at least a bit of moment of exhale, so that you could, when folks got those stimulus checks and then we had a massive labor shortage, it was because people were exhaling from the
That's right.
grind of capitalism, right?
That's right.
And being able to think about, like, if I wasn't continually having to grind and hustle all the time, who do I want to be? But why are Democrats not saying to people, yes, we failed to sustain it, but we are the folks who created the possibility for you to imagine launching your business, staying home with your kids, being more present for your family, not a world in which you don't have to hustle all the time just to make it. We have broken that crack. We have put it in the ceiling. Help us to bust all the way through. We need more power to do that. We just have to stop conceding the narrative, and we have to have more creativity and imagination about who we can be. And part of that work, and the shameless plug here is, but you don't believe in your creativity and your ability to imagine different possibilities unless somebody is engaging you as a young person and saying, look at the beauty of this world that you're a part of, right? And so
Mhm.
I'm doing it with young people, because I also do it with college students. So often kids arrive to my class, and the thing that public schools have stomped out of them is their sense of curiosity and possibility. And so
Mhm.
much of what I'm doing as a teacher is sometimes just saying to young people, particularly young people of color, you get to ask questions. You get to say, this doesn't work for me. You get to challenge the idea. You get to, imagine that it could be different, and that you don't just have to accept things as they are. And so that reinstituting of curiosity, Republicans want to kill curiosity, and to return us to a version of history where we already know what the terrible ending will be. It is only those on the left, Democrats and folks farther to the left than Democrats, to be quite honest, who are like, let us move into a world with curiosity and possibility and creativity and imagination.